The morning had started off peacefully. Grandma was sitting by the window with her cup of tea, humming softly to herself as the neighborhood slowly woke up. She loved her quiet mornings, where the birdsong was louder than the sound of passing cars, and she could pretend for just a little while that the world outside her home was gentle. That calm was broken by the sound of a sharp knock at the door, not the kind of polite tap neighbors usually gave, but firm and demanding. Curious, she set her cup aside and shuffled to the door. 2 men stood there, both dressed in matching uniforms. That looked official at first glance: dark blue shirts, fake patches stitched onto the sleeves, and shiny badges hanging around their necks. They called themselves HOA Security, saying they were there on official business. One of them carried a clipboard, the other kept glancing around the yard as though he was casing the place. Grandma felt her stomach twist, but she didn't want to be rude. She opened the door wider, clutching the edge nervously. They claimed she had been violating community rules, accusing her of not maintaining her lawn properly and parking in restricted areas. Grandma, flustered, tried to explain that she lived alone and did her best to keep everything neat. The man with the clipboard smirked, saying she would have to pay a hefty fine immediately or face further action. His partner chimed in, warning that if she didn't comply, they could remove property until the fine was settled. Grandma's first instinct was to reach for the phone on the table near the entryway, but when she glanced in that direction, the taller man stepped inside uninvited, blocking her path. "No need to call anyone, ma'am," he said in a tone that made her skin crawl. The other followed, closing the door behind them without asking. Suddenly, the small living room that had always felt so safe now felt like a trap. She tried to remain calm, telling them she needed to see proper paperwork. Instead of answering, the man with the clipboard laughed and leaned in too close, his breath sour, his eyes sharp. "Paperwork won't matter if we report you to the board. You'll lose this house." The second man edged closer, towering over her fragile frame. Grandma's hands trembled. She wished desperately for someone to show up, anyone who could help. She didn't know that in just a few minutes her wish would be answered in a way neither of those men expected. The atmosphere in the living room thickened as the men grew bolder. One of them, the taller and more aggressive of the two, shoved Grandma lightly toward the couch, his fake badge swinging as he sneered. "Sit down and make this easy on yourself," he barked. She stumbled backward, clutching the armrest for balance. Her heart pounded in her chest as she tried to protest, saying she'd never heard of such fines before and wanted to see their identification. Instead of responding reasonably, the man with the clipboard slapped a piece of paper onto the coffee table. It was nothing more than a printed sheet filled with legal-sounding words. No official letterhead, no signatures, just a scare tactic. Grandma squinted at it, her eyes watering from both fear and frustration. She knew something wasn't right, but her voice cracked as she said, "I won't give you money without proof." That was enough to push them over the edge. The taller man yanked her arm roughly, snarling, "Old lady, you don't get to argue. You pay now, or you'll regret it." She gasped at the pain shooting through her shoulder and tried to pull away, but his grip was like iron. The other one circled around, watching with cold detachment, then casually picked up her cell phone from the side table. He turned it over in his hands, smirking. "We'll just hold on to this so you don't get any bright ideas." He slipped it into his pocket as though it already belonged to him. Grandma's fear swelled into panic. Her voice quivered as she begged, "Please, leave me alone. I don't have anything for you." The men exchanged a glance, their fake authority slipping into outright menace. The one with the phone leaned down, his voice low and threatening. "If you don't cooperate, we'll make sure the HOA board comes after you harder. You think you're safe in this house? You're not." tears welled in her eyes, but she refused to completely give in. She shook her head weakly, clutching the couch cushion as if it could shield her. The taller man tightened his grip, raising his free hand like he might strike her if she resisted again. For the first time in years, she truly felt powerless in her own home. But just then, the front door creaked. The sound was small, but it made all three heads snap up. My brother had just stepped inside, returning from his morning jog, unaware of the storm waiting for him in the living room. Within seconds, he would realize exactly what was happening, and everything was about to change. My brother froze in the doorway for only a moment, his breathing heavy from his jog, sweat still glistening on his forehead. He expected to see Grandma sitting in her chair with the morning news on, not two strangers looming over her, one gripping her arm tightly while she whimpered in pain. His eyes narrowed instantly, rage sparking before he even processed the situation. The taller man turned toward him with a sneer, clearly underestimating the danger that had just walked in. "What's this? Another one?" "Sit down, kid. This doesn't concern you," the imposter barked, his grip on Grandma tightening as if to prove a point. My brother's fists clenched at his sides, his chest rising and falling like a bull ready to charge. His voice was low and steady, but it carried the weight of a threat. "Let go of my grandmother, now." The man with the clipboard laughed mockingly, tossing the useless piece of paper onto the floor. "Oh, tough guy, huh? You'll regret that mouth." He stepped forward, shoulders squared, trying to intimidate. But my brother didn't flinch. His eyes locked onto Grandma's frightened face, her hand reaching toward him like a plea for help, and that was all the motivation he needed. The taller man released Grandma suddenly and lunged at my brother, swinging a wild punch aimed at his head. But my brother had trained enough to react with instinct. He ducked under the swing, driving his fist hard into the man's jaw. The crack echoed through the small living room, and the fake cop crumpled to the floor like a sack of bricks, unconscious before he even hit the carpet. Grandma gasped, her trembling hand covering her mouth in shock. The second imposter's smirk vanished in an instant. He glanced at his partner sprawled on the ground, then at my brother standing tall, eyes blazing with fury. Panic flickered in his expression, but pride forced him forward. He rushed at my brother, trying to tackle him. With a swift, practiced move, my brother sidestepped, hooked his arm around the man's collar, and used the momentum against him. In one powerful motion, he hurled the man straight toward the front door. The wooden door slammed open as the imposter's body crashed through, tumbling onto the porch with a painful grunt. He scrambled on all fours, clutching his ribs and looking back at my brother like he had just seen a monster. Grandma clung to the arm of the couch, eyes wide in disbelief as my brother stood protectively in front of her, chest heaving, daring the man to try again. But the fight was already over. The living room was silent except for Grandma's shaky breaths and the groan of the man, sprawled out on the porch. My brother stood in front of her like a shield, his fist still clenched, his jaw tight. For a moment, time felt suspended. The second imposter, still dazed from being thrown outside, tried to gather himself, but fear had already overtaken him. He scrambled backward down the porch steps, muttering curses and empty threats, before taking off down the street without even looking back. His partner remained motionless on the carpet, knocked out cold. Grandma reached for my brother's arm, her hand trembling as she whispered, "Thank you, my boy. I thought they were going to hurt me." Her voice cracked with a mixture of relief and fear. My brother softened instantly, turning to kneel beside her. "You're safe now, Grandma. They're not going to touch you again." He gently rubbed her arm where the man had grabbed her, checking to make sure she wasn't badly hurt. Not wasting another second, he pulled out his phone and called the police, his tone sharp and urgent as he explained what had happened. Within minutes, sirens wailed in the distance, growing louder until red and blue lights flashed against the walls of the house. Officers stormed in, quickly assessing the scene. One checked the unconscious man on the floor while another took statements from Grandma and my brother. It didn't take long to expose the truth. The badges were cheap replicas bought online, and the so-called fine notice was a badly written scam letter. The uniforms were mismatched pieces, stitched together to look convincing at a glance. The officers confirmed these men weren't HOA security at all, just con artists targeting vulnerable seniors in the neighborhood. "You did the right thing, son," one officer said firmly, giving my brother a nod of respect. "If you hadn't shown up when you did, who knows how far they would have gone." Grandma sat back in her chair, still shaken but visibly relieved. She held my brother's hand tightly, her gratitude spilling out in quiet whispers. Word of the incident spread through the neighborhood quickly, and soon neighbors came by to check on her, offering support and praising my brother for his bravery. By the end of the day, Grandma's fear began to fade, replaced by pride in the young man who had stood up for her when she needed it most. The imposters were taken away in handcuffs, and the neighborhood learned a valuable lesson. Not everyone who knocks on your door has